Okay, example 2 in our first lesson. It says, use the graph provided to answer the following questions. So we have a graph. It's titled Katie's heart rate. On my y-axis, it's labeled R, so it's the R-axis. It's the heart rate in beats per minute, so how many times Katie's heart beats in a minute. And then this x-axis is labeled t, and t is time. Okay, again, independent variable on the bottom here. The independent variable always goes on the bottom, and the dependent variable always goes on the side like this. Okay. So I know from like 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock a.m., Katie's heart rate was 68. It's got nice little numbers here for us to read the graph, which is great. So she had a heart rate of 68 beats per minute. So a question you might be expected to answer is something simply like this. What does the graph show? Well, you have to be able to say exactly what the graph shows. The graph, I'll type it nicely. The graph shows Katie's heart rate at a certain time in the day. That's a good enough answer for that in terms of what the graph shows. Next question, when was Katie's heart rate the lowest and what was it? So we have to look for the lowest heart rate. This one is 68 here. We've got a 68 here, 68 there, and a 68 there. It looks like that is probably the lowest. So her heart rate was lowest at 68 beats per minute, or BPM. And that occurred, if we're looking at the graph, that occurred at 8 o'clock a.m. It occurred at 2 o'clock p.m. It also occurred at 5 o'clock p.m. And last but not least, it occurred at 9 o'clock p.m. And finally, C, when was her heart rate the highest and why might have this been so? So we can see right here, her heart rate was way higher than average. It's 120 beats per minute, and that was at 1 o'clock p.m. So at 1 o'clock p.m., her heart rate was 120 beats per minute. Why might have this been so? Well, this is something that we have to speculate about, something that we just have to create an answer for. So I'm going to say she could have been working out. Maybe she was in the gym. Okay. Here's some more information about broken line graphs that we need to know. So a broken line graph may help us to discover a regular pattern in the data. It may show a generally increasing or decreasing trend, which can allow you to interpolate or extrapolate a value. Now, what do those two words mean? Well, interpolate over here means to estimate a value between two known values. So in between two known values, that's inside, interpolate, inside two known values, we might be able to estimate another value. Extrapolate means to estimate a value beyond a known range of values. So outside, it's extra information. It's outside of information we already know. I'll show you what I mean exactly by that. Here it says interpolating means to estimate a value between two values shown on the graph. Extrapolating means to predict a value from beyond the data shown on the graph. So interpolate is inside the data, extrapolate is outside the data. So example 3, the following graph shows the growth rate of a bean plant that David planted in his vegetable garden. So here's the graph. It's the growth of a bean plant. On the y-axis, it's labeled H, and we have the height in centimeters. On the x-axis, it's the week that the bean plant has been growing. So from 0 to 1 week's worth of time has passed, so 7 days. And you can see that the bean plant grew at a certain rate each time. And that rate varies from week one, from 0 to 1. The bean plant had a relatively short growth time, but from week 3 to week 5, the bean plant went straight up. It shot straight up and grew a lot of centimeters. It looks like approximately 15 centimeters there. So here's some questions that you might be able to answer. First, A said, David forgot to record the height of the bean plant in week 4. Use the graph to interpolate the height of the plant that week. So we can see for week 4, David forgot to record the height, but because he recorded in week 3 and week 5, here and here, what we can do is use that data to interpolate approximately how high the bean plant had grown. And I'm going to just go kind of right where the line on 4 would fall. And it looks like it's, it's in this range here, which would be between 20 and 25, maybe 22 centimeters, something like that. I'm going to interpolate that data and say it's going to be about 22 centimeters. B says, what might the height of the plant be in week 12? Well, the graph only goes to week 11, so we have to extrapolate some information because we're going outside of our known values. The highest height I have is for week 11. It's just under 40 centimeters. Let's say it's maybe 39 centimeters. And if we look at week 10 also had a very similar height. So I'm going to assume that week 12, if it continued on, it probably would be about the same because the trend there kind of flattens out. Like it goes up a little bit and then it starts to flatten out. And, most plants will have, a real growth. The trend will kind of go up, 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 and then it'll reach its maximum height. A lot of plants will keep growing. But, sometimes they reach a maximum height, and it looks like it's leveling out here a little bit. So I'm going to extrapolate and say that the height of the plant in week 12 would be 39 centimeters. If you said 40 centimeters, I would understand that, and that would be okay. But as long as your answer makes sense. I mean, if you said 15 centimeters, then you're way off, and it doesn't make any sense. And finally, C says, write a statement describing trends in the bean plant's growth rate from week 0 to week 11. Okay, well, let's write a statement here. I'm going to say between weeks 1 and 2, let's say 0 to 2 is a slow growth rate. And I'll say between week 2 to 5, we have a fast growth rate. And then I can say between weeks, let's say 5 and 9, between weeks 5 and 9, the growth rate, if you can see, between 5 and 9, it kind of, I gotta go back to my drawing tool. It kind of goes back up. It's like kind of a slower growth rate there. We'll say a slow growth rate. And finally, between weeks 9 and 11, the growth rate flattens out. Those are the sections of the graph that I can identify, just because it looks like to me that there's a trend there. Like from here to here, the growth rate is similar. From 2 to 5, the growth rate is similar. From 5 to 9, the growth rate is similar. And then from 9 to 11, the growth rate is more similar. So that's how I broke it up. Again, as long as your answers make sense, I will give you marks for these things, okay? Again, I hope that makes sense. I've got one more example to share with you, and then we're done.